You know when you look at a map and it's just covered in all these swirling lines and weird symbols, and you just feel kinda lost? Well, what if I told you that map is actually telling you a story, a really detailed story about mountains and valleys and the world all around us? Today, we're gonna learn to speak its language.
Okay, let's start with a problem, a really, really big one. Imagine for a second that you're a cartographer, a map maker, and you've been given a job: create one single, highly detailed map of an entire country. I mean, where would you even start?
So let's take this place for example, the beautiful island nation of Sri Lanka. From the very top at Point Pedro, all the way down to Dandra Head in the south, you're looking at 432 kilometers. And our job is to map every single bit of it in great detail. So here's the question for you. We're using what's called a 1 to 50,000 scale. That means for every 1 centimeter on our map, you're looking at 50,000 centimeters, or, half a kilometer, out in the real world. So how big would a single piece of paper need to be to map the whole island?
Well, get this. The length? A staggering 8.64 meters. To put that in perspective, that's longer than a London double-decker bus. I mean, can you even imagine trying to fold that thing?
And that's just the length. The width would be almost 4.5 meters. You'd basically need a warehouse just to roll it out. So, yeah, trying to actually use a map like this, it's just impossible. Okay, so if a single giant map is a total non-starter, what do? How did cartographers solve this massive problem? Well, turns out, if you can't use it in one piece, you just slice it up. Let's see how that works. And this right here shows you the solution perfectly. On the left, there's our problem, that giant, useless map. But on the right, that's the genius fix. They just laid a grid over the whole country and chopped it up into 92 smaller, totally manageable pieces. So much better, right? And each one of these little rectangles is called a map sheet. The best way to think of it is like it's a single page in a country-sized atlas. So you can just pull out the one page you need, whether you're exploring the city of Kandy or some remote beach. So we've solved the size problem, which is great. But that brings us to an even trickier challenge. How on earth do you take our rich, complex, three-dimensional world and squash it all down into a flat piece of paper? Honestly, the best way to wrap your head around it is to think of a map as having its own language. The legend, or the key, that's your dictionary. If you want to understand the story the landscape is telling you, you've got to learn the symbols first. And this language, it's really broken down into two main types of words. You've got your physical features, that's everything created by nature, forests, rivers, mountains. And then you've got cultural features. That's all the stuff humans added to the picture, like roads, buildings, that sort of thing. And this is where it gets really cool. The level of detail is just amazing. Take a look here at the vegetation part of the legend. That little yellow symbol, it doesn't just mean farm. It specifically means paddy field. And the different greens aren't just trees. They tell you if it's a super dense forest or just some scattered grassland.
Same goes for the cultural features. It's never just a road. The map tells you, is this a big Class A highway or a smaller road that's only good for a Jeep? Or is it maybe just a footpath? It's just a crazy amount of information all packed into these simple little lines and dashes.
Okay, so roads and forests, we've got that covered. But what about the biggest challenge of them all? How do you show elevation? How do you draw hills, mountains, the actual shape of the land on a totally flat map? The answer, honestly, is a stroke of genius. It's called the contour line. Now, it's an imaginary line on the map, but it represents something very, very real. Every single point along one single contour line is at the exact same height above sea level. And this right here is the aha moment. Seriously, look at the hill on the left, a real 3D hill. Now look at the map on the right. See those circles? Each one of those is like a horizontal slice of that hill at a specific height. It's like they traced the shape of the hill at different levels and then just laid all those tracings down flat. Okay, and here's the most important rule you need to know. When you see the lines are really far apart, that tells you it's a gentle slope, nice and easy to walk up. But when you see them all bunched up, packed really close together, that means the height is changing fast. You're looking at a super steep hillside, maybe even a cliff. So now that we've got the basic grammar down, we know what the symbols mean, we know how contour lines work, we can actually start reading the landscape. We can start spotting real landforms just by looking at these squiggly lines. All right, first up, let's look for one of the most common landforms out there, a valley. So how do we spot one on the map? Okay, so we all know a valley is a low area usually between two hills, right? But here's the secret to finding it on a map. The U or V shape that the contour lines make always points uphill toward the higher ground. Check this out. On the left, you've got a real-life valley. On the right, you see how it looks on the map. See those V shapes and the lines? Notice how they're all pointing up towards the higher elevations? That is the classic telltale sign of a valley. Okay, so if a V pointing uphill is a valley, what do you think it means when the V points downhill? Well, that brings us to the exact opposite of a valley, a landform we call a spur. So a spur is basically a finger of high land that sticks out from a bigger hill into a lower area. And here's the really neat part. The pattern is the exact opposite of a valley. The V shape points downhill, away from the high ground. And if you're a hiker, this is so important to know. That spur could be a nice dry ridge giving you a great view, a way better path than trudging through a wet valley. All right, time for the final exam. We've learned about symbols, we've learned about colors, and we've learned about the magic of contour lines. We can even spot valleys and spurs, so let's put it all together. Take a look at this map section. It's got a reservoir, roads, a sanctuary, and a whole lot of contour lines. So go on, take a look. You now have the skills. You can see those steep slopes that plunge right down to the reservoir. You can probably trace where the river flows. You could even figure out the easiest way to walk up those hills and see exactly why people decided to build roads where they did. See, you're not just looking at lines on a page anymore. You are reading the landscape. The question is,